We begin with the clock ticking toward what would be the largest strike against a single employer in Canadian history. The Public Service Alliance of Canada has a deadline for tomorrow night. If no deal is reached with the federal government, more than 100,000 federal workers are walking off the job on Wednesday. Here's how that could affect you. First, your income tax return could be delayed. You could also be delayed crossing the border both by vehicle and by air. Your passport, immigration, or EI application could also be delayed, and if you're a veteran, your application for a new payment could be delayed. The sticking points in the negotiations appear to be wages, job security, and remote work. So what will it take to avert job action? Chris Aylward is the National President of the Public Service Alliance of Canada. Mr. Aylward, it's good to talk to you again.
Always good to be here, David. Thank you.
So how likely is a strike at this point?
We're still at the table. We're still talking, and there is still some progress being made. So I am still somewhat hopeful that we can get to a deal by 9 p.m. tomorrow night to avoid a strike.
So if you're still making progress and it's still going okay and you're still at the table, why did you feel the need to set the strike deadline of tomorrow night?
Because we started bargaining in June of 2021. So we've been at the bargaining table for almost 2 years now. When we started back with the mediation session 2 weeks ago, there was some progress made as well as last week, but it wasn't, going really fast at all. It was a snail pace. And every day, every week, that workers don't get that fair and decent wage increase, they're falling further and further behind. So that's why we decided to announce this morning we're going to set a clock on this round of bargaining. After almost 2 years of being at the table, we don't get to a deal by 9 p.m. tomorrow night, we'll be on strike Wednesday morning.
Okay, so 9 p.m. tomorrow night, the talks break off, and then like 12:01, I believe it is, that's when the picket lines would go up. Is that your plan if this doesn't work?
Correct, exactly.
Right. So when we spoke last week, though, you said if you weren't negotiating through the weekend, that was a bad sign. You negotiated through the weekend, you're negotiating now. So how realistic do you think the hope is of a deal by 9 o'clock tomorrow night?
Like I said, I'm still hopeful. There's still a couple of issues that we're stuck in the mud on. If we can get those issues unstuck and get some talks going back and forth on those issues, I feel like we may be able to get to a deal. Like I said, I'm hopeful of that because we really do not want to go on strike. We do not want to impact Canadians the way a national general strike would impact them. We know that Canadians rely on services every day that our members provide, and our members want to be providing that service. They do not want to go on strike either, but they know if we've got to fight for a fair and decent wage increase, they're prepared to do that.
So let's just dig into that a little bit, because if there is a strike, essential workers will stay on the job, and you have tens of thousands of essential workers in your union. So how many people would actually walk out if you do strike, and what services specifically would be affected by that?
So as far as the essential services are concerned, so we're looking at anything for, national income security programs, for example, will not be affected. Anything dealing with national security will not be affected. So we have, as you said, we've got about 34,000 of those 150,000 members deemed essential. But we'll still have, 120,000 members involved in the strike out on the streets.
So could we see delays on things like employment insurance claims, income tax refunds, immigration applications, passports, all of those things?
Absolutely. In some cases, there'll be complete shutdowns of services, and in other cases, there will be certainly slowdowns and delays, unfortunately, in some of those other services.
Given some of the challenges we've had with government services over the last couple of years, are you prepared for a bit of a backlash from the public if there were further slowdowns? I know passports was a massive issue coming out of the real depths of the lockdown. Are you prepared for that kind of pushback if a strike leads to a slowdown there?
Well, let's just talk about that for a second. The last summer with the passport program, because people quickly forget what happened in 2013. In 2013, that's when the 10-year passport was introduced. The government of the day laid off thousands of Passport Canada employees, basically did away with Passport Canada. Passport Canada doesn't even exist today. They come under Service Canada now. So you introduce a 10-year passport program in 2013. You got to figure 9 years from now, there's going to be a scramble of people requesting passports again. And that's what happened last summer.
But still, people were angry about it, and some people may still not have what they want. And if a strike, if job action, further impairs their ability to do that, they're going to be angry again, right? So this is the reality you're facing if you do take the strike.
Canadians are angry today anyway because of the current economic context. workers right across this country, whether they're unionized, non-unionized, public sector, private sector, workers are fed up. They're frustrated. They watch these mega corporations making record profits, and we sit back and everybody wants to repress the workers' wages. And that's the issue that we're really having with the government. This government is on record as saying they believe in workers. Mm-hmm. Well, being the largest employer in the country, then don't try to repress your wages on your own employees, because when they repress wages on their own employees, they're repressing wages for all workers in all sectors. So we want them to come to the table and set that bar so that all workers can get a fair and decent wage increase. Because that's what workers in this country deserve in the current economic context.
Well, let's just talk wages for a second, because last week, I believe, it was 4.5% a year you were looking for, and they were offering a little over 2%. Mm-hmm. Has that narrowed in the talks? Where are you on money at this point in time?
We have moved from our position, slightly. They have moved in their wage proposal as well, slightly. So there is some movement happening on that front. But as I've said before, we can't move too far off that demand of 4.5, because we want to make sure that our members are at least in line with inflation.
So is it wages that is the sticking point right now, or is it remote work? Because I know this is something where the government has been a little bit more dug in on, that they don't really want to negotiate because they consider the location of work to be a management right, and they don't necessarily want to collectively bargain that. I mean, what is the big issue right now in these talks? Is it remote work or is it money?
There's a combination of several issues. The key issues that are still on the table, of course, are the wages, are remote work, seniority for under our workforce adjustment appendix. We're seeking that as well. So that's some of the more points we're kind of stuck on. But there's other issues that are being discussed as well, and we're making some improvements and some progress on those other issues as well.
But which of these issues is the most fundamental right now? Do you think where there's the most difficulty in reaching an agreement by 9 o'clock Tuesday night?
The key top priorities: wages, remote work, and our job security workforce adjustment appendix. That would be the issues right now.
There's been a lot of questions asked on Parliament Hill today about the possibility of back-to-work legislation should you go out and these services are impaired. The New Democrats obviously are against it. It doesn't appear like there have been any conversations about that. And I know they've promised anti-scab legislation, right? For federally regulated workers. What's your sense of even the appetite of using back-to-work legislation by the Liberal government?
Well, like you say, the leader of the National New Democratic Party, Jagmeet Singh, I spoke with him, and obviously they will not support any kind of back-to-work legislation. As far as triggering that legislation, I agree with you. For a party that's promises and has committed to introducing the anti-scab legislation by the end of this year, we hope they're not too trigger happy when it comes to back-to-work legislation. Okay,
so what happens now? I mean, the deadline is 9 o'clock Tuesday night. Are you negotiating through the night? Are talks at that particular stage sort of a marathon final push towards that timeline?
We'll do whatever we can to avoid a strike at 12:01 a.m. Wednesday, April 19th.
But are there talks going this evening and all that sort of stuff as well, or do you take any kind of a break at all?
No, once we get there, once we start at it, normally it's, the back and forth can go well into the early hours of the morning.
Okay. Chris Aylward, thanks for coming in.
Always a pleasure, David. Thank you.